The island of New Guinea, the world's second-largest island, is politically divided between two nations. The eastern half forms the independent country of Papua New Guinea, while the western half, known as Western New Guinea or Papua, is part of Indonesia. This division is the result of a complex interplay of colonial legacies, geopolitical strategies, and Cold War dynamics. Indonesia's control over Western New Guinea, which encompasses the provinces of Papua, West Papua, Central Papua, Highland Papua, South Papua, and Southwest Papua, stems from historical claims, diplomatic maneuvers, and a controversial integration process in the 1960s. This essay explores the reasons behind Indonesia's ownership of half of New Guinea, tracing the historical, political, and international factors that shaped this outcome. Colonial roots of the division. The division of New Guinea has its origins in European colonialism. By the 19th century, European powers had carved up much of the Pacific, including New Guinea. The western half of the island was claimed by the Netherlands as part of the Dutch East Indies, formalized in 1828, and named Netherlands New Guinea. The Dutch saw the region as a strategic buffer and a potential sphere of influence, though they invested little in its development until the mid-20th century. The eastern half of New Guinea was divided between Britain and Germany, with Britain controlling the southeast, later called Papua, and Germany the northeast. After World War I, Australia took over the German territory under a League of Nations mandate, and by 1921, Australia administered both regions as the territory of Papua and New Guinea. This colonial partition set the stage for the modern division. The Dutch East Indies, including Western New Guinea, were administered as a single entity, fostering a sense of unity among Indonesian nationalists who later claimed all Dutch territories as part of their independent state. In contrast, the eastern half developed under British and Australian influence, with closer ties to Melanesian and Pacific identities, paving the way for Papua New Guinea's distinct trajectory toward independence in 1975, Indonesian independence, and territorial claims. When Indonesia declared independence in 1945, leaders like Sukarno and Hatta claimed all former Dutch East Indies, including Western New Guinea, based on colonial boundaries. For Indonesian nationalists, excluding it was unacceptable. However, the Netherlands resisted, citing cultural and ethnic differences, arguing the Melanesian population was distinct from Indonesians. At the 1949 Round Table Conference, which granted Indonesia independence, the Dutch insisted on keeping Western New Guinea to prepare it for future independence and retain regional influence. The issue was left unresolved, with a vague agreement to revisit it later, but no consensus was ever reached. Dutch efforts and Indonesian opposition in the 1950s, the Netherlands intensified efforts to prepare Western New Guinea for self-determination. They established institutions like the New Guinea Council, held local elections, opened a naval academy, and increased investments in education and infrastructure. By 1961, the Morning Star flag, a symbol of Papuan independence, was raised, signaling Dutch intentions to create an independent Papuan state. These moves alarmed Indonesia, which saw them as a violation of its territorial claims and a threat to its national unity. Indonesia pursued a two-pronged strategy: diplomatic pressure and military action. From 1950 to 1958, Indonesia sought international support through the United Nations, but resolutions favoring its claim failed to gain traction. Frustrated, President Sukarno escalated tensions by nationalizing Dutch assets in Indonesia in 1957, expelling thousands of Dutch nationals and severing diplomatic ties in 1960. In 1961, Sukarno authorized Operation Trikora, a military campaign to liberate Western New Guinea, leading to skirmishes with Dutch forces, Cold War geopolitics, and the New York Agreement. The West New Guinea dispute unfolded against the backdrop of the Cold War, which significantly influenced its resolution. The United States, initially neutral, grew concerned about Indonesia's leftward drift under Sukarno, who cultivated ties with the Soviet Union and communist-leaning non-aligned nations, fearing that a prolonged conflict could push Indonesia toward communism. The U.S. shifted its stance in the early 1960s, pressuring the Netherlands to negotiate. The UK and Australia, while initially supportive of the Dutch, also prioritized regional stability over prolonging the dispute. In 1962, under U.S. mediation, Indonesia and the Netherlands signed the New York Agreement, which transferred administration of Western New Guinea to the United Nations Temporary Executive Authority, UNTEA, starting October 1962, with Indonesia assuming control in May 1963. The agreement stipulated that a referendum, known as the Act of Free Choice, would be held by 1969 to determine whether the people of Western New Guinea wished to remain with Indonesia or seek independence. This arrangement was seen as a compromise, but it heavily favored Indonesia's interests. The 1969 Act of Free Choice remains a highly controversial moment in Indonesia's control of Western New Guinea. Rather than a true referendum, only 1,025 hand-picked Papuan elders, less than 1% of the population, were selected under military supervision to vote, all choosing integration with Indonesia. International observers, including the UNHCR, criticized the process as undemocratic. Still, the United Nations accepted the result, and the region was annexed as Indonesia's 26th province, now known as Papua. Many Papuans saw this as a betrayal, sparking long-term resentment and the rise of the Free Papua Movement, OPM. Indonesia's control deepened through transmigration programs that brought in hundreds of thousands of non-Papuans, marginalizing the indigenous Melanesian identity and fueling separatist anger. By 2010, migrants made up nearly half the population. The region has since seen ongoing conflict, human rights abuses, and military crackdowns. Thousands have been displaced, with many fleeing to neighboring Papua New Guinea. Despite reports from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, the global response has been limited. Countries like the US and Australia have prioritized strategic ties with Indonesia over addressing Papuan demands, leaving the issue unresolved and tensions ongoing. Indonesia's ownership of half of New Guinea is the outcome of colonial legacies, nationalist ambitions, Cold War geopolitics, and a flawed decolonization process. The Dutch retention of Western New Guinea after Indonesian independence set the stage for a protracted dispute, resolved through US-mediated diplomacy and a controversial referendum that favored Indonesia. While Indonesia views Western New Guinea as an integral part of its archipelagic state, the unresolved grievances of indigenous Papuans continue to challenge the legitimacy of its rule, raising questions about self-determination and justice in a post-colonial world.